Beneath the raging Pacific storms, beyond the jagged coastlines of Alaska, a forgotten battlefield lies hidden under blankets of fog and silence. It wasn't Europe. It wasn't the Pacific Islands we see in movies. It was a place where soldiers and pilots didn't just fight the enemy. They fought the Earth itself. Freezing winds, blinding mist, volcanic cliffs, an unforgiving ocean ready to swallow them whole. And yet, here, in one of the most remote corners of the world, one of the least-known aerial conflicts of World War II unfolded, the air battles of the Aleutian Islands. Most people today have never even heard of it. But what if I told you for over a year, United States and Japanese airmen clashed in chilling duels above fog-filled skies, often never even seeing each other? What if I told you that it was one of the only times during World War II that enemy forces occupied American soil? And what if I told you that the greatest threat in these battles wasn't bullets, it was the Aleutians themselves? This is the story of the war the weather tried to erase. In 1942, the world's attention was fixed on the Pacific, the Philippines, Midway, Guadalcanal. But far to the north, stretching like a broken spine from Alaska toward Asia, lay a chain of islands so harsh and desolate that early explorers called them the birthplace of winds, the Aleutian Islands. The United States had airfields scattered across them, windswept gravel runways manned by young soldiers who probably never expected to see combat. Many thought of it as a backwater posting, a cold, lonely assignment far from the real war. But Japan had a different view. After the Battle of Midway, Japanese commanders launched Operation AL, an invasion of the Aleutians. Their targets, the islands of Attu and Kiska. For the first time since the War of 1812, foreign troops walked on American territory. It stunned Washington. The news shocked the public. But the biggest shock was yet to come. Because now the United States had to fight a war where nature was just as deadly as the enemy. The first air battles over the Aleutians weren't glorious dogfights under blue skies. They were chaotic, disorienting sometimes, almost blind. American pilots flew P-38 Lightnings, P-40 Warhawks, and B-17 Flying Fortresses out of bases like Dutch Harbor and Attu Island. Their orders? Drive Japanese reconnaissance planes out of the skies and cut off supply runs to Attu and Kiska. But the weather had other plans. Imagine taking off in winds so strong they could flip aircraft on the runway. Imagine ascending into clouds so thick that pilots describe them as flying inside cotton. Japanese and American aircraft often flew within a mile of one another, completely unaware. Some airmen reported hearing the distant roar of an enemy engine, but never saw the plane. Others vanished without a trace, no fire, no crash, just gone, swallowed by fog and sea. One U.S. pilot later said, "We lost more men to weather than to the Japanese." It wasn't an exaggeration, but eventually, the skies cleared. On June 4th, 1942, Japanese carrier-based aircraft launched a surprise attack on Dutch Harbor, bombing fuel tanks, barracks, and hospitals. American anti-aircraft guns roared, tracer rounds streaking through the mist. Fighter squadrons scrambled. P-40s shot into the air, diving through cloud layers in pursuit of Japanese Zeros. One pilot spotted a lone Zero through a break in the fog. They twisted into a deadly spiral not above the clouds, but inside them, vanishing and reappearing in flashes of metal. He fired. The Zero disappeared into the sea. It was one of the first confirmed aerial kills in the Aleutian campaign, but it wouldn't be the last. The next year became a brutal test of endurance, not just in combat, but survival. Aircraft landed on runways iced over by sleet and volcanic ash. Mechanics worked in 60-mile-per-hour winds, using their own bodies as windbreaks just to fuel the planes. Some pilots slept in flight jackets because heaters failed in their tents. Others joked that the fog was so thick you could lean against it. But amidst the misery, there were moments of sheer ingenuity. When fog covered runways, some pilots landed using truck headlights as makeshift landing guides. When radios froze, they signaled using wing waggles. When engines stalled from the cold, they lit fires beneath them, hoping the heat would coax them back to life. This was not a war of glory. It was a war of grit. By May 1943, the U.S. decided enough was enough. The skies over Attu were now filled with American bombers, B-24 Liberators and B-25 Mitchells pummeling Japanese positions. Escort fighters tangled with Zeros in high winds, often drifting miles off course during combat. Then came the Battle of Attu, but unlike other Pacific battles, the air war didn't just support the ground fight. It became part of it. American pilots dropped supplies to soldiers trapped in snow-covered valleys. Transport crews flew through storms so thick that one navigator said, "We trusted the instruments more than our own eyes." There were reports of Japanese aircraft trying to break through, but most couldn't find their targets. Because by now, both sides had learned the grim truth. In the Aleutian Islands, the weather was king. The final Japanese air missions over Kiska ended not in fire, but in silence. By the time U.S. forces stormed the island in August 1943, the Japanese had already evacuated under cover of dense fog. They escaped without a single American plane spotting them. The war in the Aleutians was effectively over. No victory parade, no dramatic headline, just silence. Today, rusted aircraft engines still lie scattered across tundra. Abandoned runways remain, half swallowed by moss and snow. And somewhere beneath the fog and wind, echoes of a war few remember. So why does it matter? Because the Aleutian Air Campaign wasn't about conquest or glory. It was about perseverance. It was about young men facing an enemy they couldn't always see, and a landscape determined to break them. It taught military commanders that nature could be as fierce as any army. It pushed aviation to develop better instruments, better navigation, better cold weather survival gear. And it reminded the world that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones no one sees. The war in the Aleutians didn't end with cheers. It ended with wind. But perhaps that's fitting, because some battles aren't remembered for their heroes, but for their endurance. And the skies over the Aleutians still whisper their story.